Only gonna speak on what I know. Let's go. See my got shot up in his home. They turned the gun on his daughter too. Cousin in the other room, and later they done shot him too. When I was coming out of school, it took me time to learn. The streets don't pay enough to go in head first. My beefing with a man, he punched him in his started fighting one. Now he in it fighting six. Never had a shot, nor a pistol, nor a car. So in less than 5 minutes, they done broke my jaw. I had a cousin live on Martin Luther, she got problems too. Killed her baby daddy, then they went and shot her too. R.I.P. to picker, noise, people missing you. To my cousin, love you, baby, glad to see you push you through. Dumb that shit cool to get shot. To the pistol in your face, and you can feel your heart drop to your feet. You feel the heat from the lead ripping through you fast. Start praying, boy, your time to run, been past. To that life, how they hearing us rap it. They get their ass robbed, now they wondering what happened. It's not a game when sleeping in the casket. You want that street shit, tell them it gon' have it. Look, I ain't tryna die in these streets. I got a lot of kids and my babies gotta eat. Hard working, young, tryna stay on my feet. And dying in the streets not an option, I see. You gotta understand, I don't wanna die this way. I'm only 19, got a son I gotta raise. I got a young wife, boy, I'm finally getting laid. And I got a good job, hard to find these days. I don't wanna die. Get a record. That's when you realize you don't really want a record. It'll change your life. See, they don't help you go to school, they won't give you no job. See, the whole system set to get you back up on that block. And see you coming up, you know you getting robbed. Fed time, how the realest snitching to the cops. But let them catch you on that corner out there selling beat. Before you know it, throw your ass back up in that box. Gee, my dog was busted, dying for that street credit. I know he went and did it cause he didn't get respected. Judge sentenced my 7 years prison, got him in a cell sitting when just try and kill him. Listen, live your life how you hearing us rap it. And get your ass robbed, now you wondering what happened. Shit is not a game if living in the casket. You want that street life, I tell them it gon' have it. Look, I ain't tryna die in these streets. I got a lot of kids and my babies gotta eat. Hard working, young, tryna stay on my feet. And dying in the streets not an option, I see. Please understand, I don't wanna die this way. I'm only 19, got a son I gotta raise. I got a young wife, boy, I'm finally getting laid. And I got a good job, hard to find these days. And I don't wanna die. I don't wanna die this way. I'm only 19, got a son I gotta raise. I got a young wife, boy, I'm finally getting laid. And I got a good job, hard to find these days. And I don't wanna die this way. I'm only 19, got a son I gotta raise. I got a young wife, boy, I'm finally getting laid. And I got a good job, hard to find these days. And I don't wanna die.
It's now time for Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. It began as a podcast, went live on the net, and transformed into a full-blown empire. Across the web, on Fight Now TV, and on radio stations around the world. It's the only daily boxing talk radio show on the planet, hosted by the only guy with the balls to do it. Many have stepped into the ring. Many have tried to take the belt, and one by one, they've fallen. Another victim of the undisputed heavyweight champion of boxing talk radio. Talkin' Boxing with Billy C is on now.
My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C studio in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for Talking Boxing with Billy C. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're listening. I want to give a special shout out, and it's great to be back on Fox Sports Radio, WMML 1230 AM on the dial. Glad to be with you. Today's show is being brought to you in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria, and I'm donning the shirt right now. If you're looking for the best pizza in the world, you got to go to St. Simon's Island, Georgia. That's where Sal's is. Yeah, well, it's worth the trip. Trust me, man. You could check it out on the web, salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com, or you can give them a call, 912-268-2328. Today's show is also being brought to you in part by The Gentleman Boxer. It's a great read written by Ian Grumeza. Get yourself a copy where all good books are sold, including Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com. Or you can check out our website, www.billycboxing.com, and click on one of the Gentleman Boxer banners. Grumeza does a great job bringing you back in time, back to the roaring 1920s. Sights, sounds, smells. I'm telling you, you start reading this book, you're not going to be able to put it down. Check it out. Like I said, The Gentleman Boxer, Amazon.com, or Barnes & Noble. Today's show is also being brought to you in part by the adult break the ice game for couples called Titty Grab. Check out all the information about the game by visiting their website, www.tittygrab.com. And today's show is also being brought to you in part by the World Boxing Federation and two great cards coming up. One is happening in Saratoga, New York. Hey, what's better than checking out the races on August 15th and then capping off your day checking out the fights, which are going to be taking place in Saratoga, New York. Now, it's a World Boxing Federation title fight, local product out of Albany area. Sean Miller will be headlining the card. He's defending his WBF North American light heavyweight title, going up against Paul Filippelli, which is a great matchup. So you got to check that fight out. You can get tickets by visiting our website, www.billycboxing.com, and clicking on the fight poster, which is right there on the right-hand side. Make sure you demand the Billy C discount and tell him Billy C sent you. The second World Boxing Federation card is taking place a week later, August 22nd, in beautiful Tampa, Florida. Two World Boxing Federation titles on the line, including female world junior welterweight matchup between Chevelle Fist of Steel Halbach and Victoria Cisneros. So you could get tickets to that if you're going to be in Tampa by visiting www.billycboxing.com and clicking on the fight poster, which says Forum Round 2 right on the front page. Coming up in a little bit, we got some news. Another snoozer coming our way on Showtime, thanks to Al Heyman and his blueprint of boring us to death. I'll talk about that. Just to give you a quick update, Diego Chavez, he's in the country, that is. That's right, the fight is on. It's taking place on Saturday. Bam Bam Rios returns to the ring, and he will be facing his opponent that we all hoped he would, Diego Chavez. The visa problems are done. He's on his way to Las Vegas right now, so we'll be looking forward to that one on Saturday. I also have some news on the Curtis Stevens Nadam fight, where that's going to be, and it's pretty good news there. Terrence Crawford, he's going to be making a world title defense. We'll talk about that. An update on Manny Pacquiao and Chris Algieri. And also Bob Arum's got some stuff going on, including the fight that they tried to make happen earlier this year. It looks like it may happen. Carl Froch against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., but it's looking like it's going to happen in early 2015. The return of Andre Durrell is this week. That's right. It's happening this week. We'll talk about that. Some other news, some schedule changes, some updates, all that happy stuff. Don't forget today's Blast from the Past. That's right, it's Blast from the Past Day. Alex Perpali and myself will be talking about a fighter that you hear a lot about, and I can't believe we've never done a blast on him before. Former world heavyweight champion and boxing Hall of Famer, and a guy that I knew personally, Floyd Patterson. We'll be talking about him in a little bit as time goes on. The phone line will be open for a little bit today, so if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, now's the time to call, 845-228-8710. We got some emails we'll go to, and speaking of going to them, We're actually only going to be taking one break here. It'll be at the half-hour mark. So all the affiliates that are looking for breaks, don't worry about it. We're only taking one, and then we'll be back on our normal break schedule. But anyway, the first email I got is from guess who? Come on, Jesse, man. Jesse will not. I've become accustomed to getting emails from my man Jesse, and it just seems like the show won't be the same without getting an email from him. Today's email says, "Hey Billy C, what's your thoughts on Caleb Plant?" At first I'm trying to decipher, because Jesse always keeps me on his toes, and he's always abbreviating names and, adding, subtracting, that kind of stuff. So I got to assume and try to anticipate what he's thinking. And I wasn't thinking who he was thinking. He was thinking Caleb Hunter Plant, I think. They call him Sweet Hands. What do I think of him? I don't know much about this guy. I'll tell you what I found out. He's only got 3 pro fights under his belt, 3 wins, no losses, 2 by knockout. He's only fought 8 rounds as a professional. He's in the middleweight division, ranked at number 279 in the world, which considering he's only got 3 pro fights, that's pretty good. So obviously there's some high expectations on this kid. He's only 22 years old. He started boxing when he was 12 years old. And, when you see a guy like this and you see, some interest in this guy already, you would think that he had a very extensive amateur career. And actually, although he boxed in the amateurs for a long time, starting fighting at 12, and he's 22 now, in 2000, he finished 4th in the U.S. National Championships in 2010, I should say. I'm sorry. In 2011, he won the National Golden Gloves at 178 pounds. And then in 2013, he won the National Golden Gloves at 165. So what I see, Jesse, is that a fighter that's getting better and going down in weight. He's now campaigning at middleweight. Hey, it's a guy I'm going to keep an eye on. I really don't have any thoughts on him because I've never seen him fight. And all I know about him is what I just said. I will say this. He's fought 3 fights against okay opposition. His pro debut was against a 2-2 guy. He beat Mike Noriega in his second fight, which was and he was 4-3. And in his last fight, which was this past weekend, he fought a 1-1 guy. Incidentally, all 3 of his professional fights took place this year. So a guy that, thanks to Jesse, we'll all keep an eye out on for Caleb Hunter Plant. The next email I have is from my man Doug. Doug from Pittsburgh. He says, "Hey, Billy C, I just discovered your show about a month ago, and I haven't missed an episode since. Keep up the great work." Hey, if you're just discovering our show right now as I speak, or if you're listening on WMML 1230 AM, don't forget, we broadcast daily. That's right. We're boxing's only daily boxing talk show. You can catch us live if we're not on a TV station near you or on a radio dial near you. Check us out online. We stream for free every day from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. www.billycboxing.com. Anyway, Doug goes on to say, "You've been saying all this week that nobody wants to fight Kovalev, but it now appears Bernard Hopkins is willing to." And he sent me over a link to the article and interesting thoughts. I will give you some highlights of it. First of all, I had a smile when I saw who's been discussing the matchup. None other than Joe Santoliquito. Now, you guys that are longtime listeners of this show know that Joe Santoliquito used to be a contributor for this show. But when his job changed and he couldn't do what we did and he took on some other positions, we parted ways. But Joe's a great guy, knows his stuff, and according to him, the rumor in boxing right now is Bernard Hopkins will take on Sergey Kovalev instead of taking on Adonis Stevenson. Is this true or is it false? A lot of people are thinking that it is true. Some comments that were made by Joe was first. It seems like Stevenson is perfectly willing to duck the elite fighters at light heavyweight and coast until the end of his career. With Stevenson turning 37 in September, his cruise to the finish line won't be that long. He goes on to say, we've already seen Stevenson bolt to Showtime in order to avoid a fight against fellow 175-pounder Sergey Kovalev, a fight that wasn't completely finalized, but it was there was an agreement in place. If Stevenson is willing to wear the Scarlet D, which means ducker, I think, to avoid Kovalev, I don't think it's much of a stretch to believe he would do the same thing with Bernard Hopkins. Of course, Kovalev is possibly the most feared puncher in the sport, while Hopkins is certainly not. But he still presents an extremely tough match, and it's a serious threat to Stevenson's belt. The reason why he thinks that it's a strong possibility of taking place, he says that Hopkins is not tied to Al Heyman and does not have an exclusive deal to Showtime. Hopkins' promoter, Golden Boy, and Main Events, which happens to represent Kovalev, are already talking about this fight with a tentative date scheduled for November 8th in Brooklyn, New York at the Barclays Center. Hopkins has been already approved by HBO, so it looks really good. You know, I just want to say this before I go on with the email, that it's unfortunate that Al Heyman has changed the complexion of this fighter, and I'm talking about Adonis Stevenson. And not only that, but as you're going to see as I talk about this in a couple of minutes, he's changed the complexion of what we're expecting, or at least what we're getting on Showtime. I think it's ludicrous that the powers that be has let this happen. I also, am not going to blame the fighters. The fighters have to take what's best for them. And most of the fighters want the most money for the least amount of work. I get it. I understand it. But for us as boxing fans, it's terrible. It's terrible. I can't come up with a better way to describe it. But back to the email from Doug from Pittsburgh. He says, what's your thoughts on this potential fight? He says, I'm sure Kovalev would be the favorite, but could B-Hop beat the odds once again and add to his legacy? No. I don't think that Bernard Hopkins could beat Kovalev. I think that Bernard Hopkins would make it interesting. I do think that. I will give him that much. Kovalev is too powerful for Bernard. I think Bernard will, he's become an 8-round fighter. He coasts and takes a couple of rounds off. I mean, let's give him credit. He's 50 years old. Literally 50 years old. I think he would go in to a potential Kovalev fight with the frustration as his game plan, meaning that he would try to frustrate Kovalev. We know that he knows how to hold and cover up and slow down the pace of fights, and I think that he would definitely try to do that. It would be interesting to see, in my opinion, it would be more interesting to see if Kovalev can operate at his normal pace and style against Bernard Hopkins, and it would be interesting to see how much Bernard Hopkins could change the complexion of this fight. The outcome, if it does happen, I would have to lean towards Kovalev. I think that Bernard Hopkins would clearly be respecting his punching power. His game plan would be probably to try and move, frustrate Kovalev a little bit, maybe get him into the later rounds. We've never seen Kovalev in the later rounds, so it would be interesting. Again, it would definitely impress me. And, not that I'm a big Hopkins fan, but listen, you could say what you want about him, and I've certainly said some things, but the truth of the matter is he doesn't duck anybody, and he's actually seeking out a guy that especially Doug from Pittsburgh wanted to point out. Bernard Hopkins is seeking out a guy that everyone else seems to be avoiding like the plague. Anyway, will it happen? It probably will, because Stevenson's turned into nothing less than a biatch, and he's looking for a coaxing career. and we'll see what happens. But thanks for the email, Doug from Pittsburgh. Appreciate that. And appreciate new listeners getting involved and interacting with us. And that's the name of the game here at the Talking Boxing with Billy C show. Definitely. Adrian Broner is set to return September 6th on Showtime. This is what I mean about Al Heyman changing the complexion of fights, making Showtime what used to be, in my opinion. If we were having this conversation 2 years ago, I'd be telling you, oh, man, I can't wait. Showtime's got a fight this week. Oh, man, I can't wait to see it, because you don't know who's going to win. That's not the case anymore. It started a little bit towards the end of last year. This year it's been, although we have been treated to a couple of surprise fights, like, of course, the Showtime pay-per-view fight between Marcos Maidana and Floyd Mayweather. Turned out to be, Maidana turned out to be a little more interesting than we thought. But here's the general tone. And my man Larry Hazard, who will be on the show tomorrow like he is on all Thursdays, my man Larry Hazard says it best. They are not putting together Al Heyman fights in conjunction with Showtime. They're not putting on 50-50 fights anymore. They're not putting on generally competitive fights. Occasionally you'll get one by accident, but they're generally putting on showcase fights. And, you got these stars that are demanding all this money and big contracts, et cetera, and they're not even fighting tough. Now, here's what I mean. Emmanuel Taylor is a good fighter. Don't get me wrong. I'm not calling him a cupcake or a tomato can or a bum or anything like that. But he's an ESPN fighter. He's a guy with a winning record that Adrian Broner is being fed. Emmanuel Taylor, as much as, not many people are fans of Adrian Broner anymore because of his antics, both in and outside the ring. But Emmanuel Taylor is just a class below. This isn't going to be a challenging fight. Taylor doesn't have a chance against Adrian Broner. It's almost like, who the hell would want to buy tickets to see this fight? It's in Cincinnati, Ohio, where Broner's from. So I guess, some of his fans, if there are any left in Ohio, will come and see it. The co-main event, same kind of fight. Lucas Matisse. Normally, when you mention Lucas Matisse, you're talking about an exciting fighter, and generally he's in exciting fights. Well, he's taking on Roberto Massa Ortiz. Listen, again, he's along the same lines as Emmanuel Taylor. He's got a respectable record. He's a good fighter, but he's an ESPN or a Fox Sports level fighter, not certainly Lucas Matisse level. This is another showcase night, man. This isn't going to be a competitive night of boxing. I just don't understand how you, the boxing fans, can accept this crap. You shouldn't. Don't watch it. Showtime, we've been looking at the numbers. HBO is blowing them away. HBO has 9 of the top 10 viewed boxing events this year. Showtime has 1. They're blowing them away. So obviously, as time goes on, more and more people, and I hope that they're doing it because they listen or watch this show, but I also hope that they're doing it on their own merit, that they know that, hey, why tune into something that's, already know the outcome. One other thing I wanted to mention, apparently Andre Berto, we were just talking about this on yesterday's show, Andre Berto finally makes his return to the ring. He'll be on the undercard on September 6th on Showtime. So we'll keep you posted on that, which is taking place, like I said, September 6th. So we'll keep you up to date on that one. How about this? ESPN2 has picked up the Curtis Stevens against Hassan Nadam fight. It's taking place October 1st. It'll be 9 p.m. It's taking place in California, and it's going to be good. Now, the Friday night fights on ESPN2 actually ends August 22nd, but lo and behold, They won the bid on this, and they're picking it up. Apparently, the winner of this fight, it's being billed as an elimination fight. The winner of this fight is scheduled to take on, or at least become the mandatory for Sam Solomon, who's the IBF title holder. Here's the thing. The last couple of days we've been talking about Triple G and his great performance over the weekend, and who's he going to fight next. And the only guy that's come out and says, I want to fight him is Sam Solomon. But here we have a situation where maybe Sammy already knew that he wasn't going to be able to fight Triple G because his mandatory in order to keep his belt is going to be the winner of this fight. We were talking yesterday about Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. possibly fighting Triple G, and we just hear that it looks like him and Carl Froch are going to be getting it on sometime in January. And we've been dreaming about a possible huge fight between Triple G and Miguel Cotto taking place at Madison Square Garden. Don't count on that one either. Apparently, Miguel Cotto is looking for some other fights and not against Triple G. I will have to wait and see on that one. It looks like he will be taking on another opponent instead of who we would like to see him fight, which is of course Triple G. So that's what's happening there right now. And by the way, Miguel Cotto is looking most likely to be taking on Saul Canelo Alvarez. Apparently, they're already negotiating. All the teams are already negotiating that. We've heard many times that Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy have buried the hatchet with Bob Arum and Top Rank. They've both said in public that they will work with each other. Maybe this will be the first fight, although I'm not 100% sure if Cotto is a free agent or not. Now, he did fight under the Top Rank banner last time. I'm not so sure what the case is now, if it would be him by himself or him coming in with Top Rank. We'll have to wait and see. But it looks like Cotto is going to take on Saul Canelo Alvarez. It looks like Sam Solomon will take on the winner of Curtis Stevens and Hassim Nadam. And it looks like Triple G isn't going to be fighting anybody. Maybe Kid Chocolate. Who knows? Speaking of title fights, how about Terrence Crawford, a guy that has just busted onto the scene? We were talking about who the next superstars are. After Manny Pacquiao retires and after Floyd retires, who's the next stars? Well, we've kind of agreed that Triple G is definitely up there. Sergey Kovalev is definitely up there. Saul Canelo Alvarez is already there. And I think this kid, Terrence Crawford, is the last of going to be the top four. Because remember, Cotto's in there right now too, but he's he's winding down his career as well. But Terrence Crawford looks like he's going to be making the second defense of his world lightweight title on November 29th, and it's actually against a really good fighter. Not that he didn't beat a really good fighter last time when he fought one of my favorite fighters out there today, Yuriorkis Gamboa. But this time, he is looks like he's scheduled to fight Raimundo Beltran in a decent fight. HBO will be broadcasting it. They're excited about it. It's on Thanksgiving weekend. So we'll keep you posted on that one. So we got a couple of decent fights coming up to close out the year. And do you think it's strange that we're talking about closing out the year already? Think about this. It's going to be August already. We're as a matter of fact, consider it, we're in August. And we got another month of summer. Then the fall comes in. And then before you know it, football season's here. And then before you know it, the fat guy in the red suit's coming, and everybody's trying to lose weight, and you make a New Year's resolutions, and before you know it, we're going to be right back here, and it's going to be summertime. But anyway, that's what's going on there. They were talking to Bob Arum about the Chris Algieri-Manny Pacquiao fight, which is scheduled for November 22nd. And everybody's trying to make this fight better than it is. Somebody made a comment on one of the versions of this show that I'm going to be wrong because I don't think that Chris Algieri is going to fare too well against Manny Pacquiao. I will admit I said the same thing about Ruslan Prodanikov, but we're talking apples and oranges here with the two styles. But nonetheless, the undercard is going to feature Zhao Shiming, and he's actually going to be fighting in a fight that looks like the winner of the fight will be fighting the winner of Amanat Ruingrong and McWilliams Arroyo, which is taking place September 14th. So apparently the next fight that Zhao Shiming is in will be an eliminator to fight the winner of this title fight that's taking place on September 14th. We've all been talking about Zhao Shiming and saying, is this guy really ready to take on a world caliber fighter? And when you look at the two fighters that are fighting for this title, Amanat Ruingrong and McWilliams Arroyo, if you wanted to pick one of the and I use this term just loosely, okay? One of the weaker potential champions, it's going to be the winner of this fight. Because the bottom line is both of these guys are limited with their professional experience, and leave it to Bob Arum and Top Rank to find the right vacant title that he could be penciled in to fight the winner of that. And speaking of Bob Arum, did you catch this? What's going on? And this, maybe I am going to be proved wrong with Chris Algieri again after I found this out today. Apparently, Manny Pacquiao is going to be training with the Kia Expansion Philippine basketball team, and he's also training and playing as a player coach. So they're talking about moving his boxing training camp so that he can still attend and be part of this expansion basketball team while he's preparing for his fight against Chris Algieri on November 22nd. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. I mean, Manny Pacquiao needs to concentrate. I mean, I would hate to think that Manny Pacquiao is just taking this fight lightly, and it looks like he is. Hey, listen, hold that thought. I'm going to take a short break. The phone lines are open, 845-228-8710. I'll be back in 2. If you're in upstate New York and you need a trucking company, then you need Rosselli Enterprises. Rosselli Enterprises is trucking at its finest. They have it all. Dump trucks, dump trailers, walk-in floors, flatbeds, flowboys, tankers, loaders, and a full line of roll-off containers for any job, big or small. Rosselli Enterprises is also the source for all your sand, gravel, and topsoil needs. Visit them on the web at RosselliTrucking.com or call 315-433-5115. That's 315-433-5115 and tell them Billy C sent you. Hey, fight fans, check out KOFantasyBoxing.com. KO Fantasy Boxing is boxing's only trademarked fantasy game. Check it out, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. Select your own gym, your own fighters, track them through a season that can last from 3 months to a year, depending upon which league you join. You got to check this out, man, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. Join it today. Again, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. And tell him Billy C sent ya.
We've got a great matchup tonight. Fighting out of the left corner is the number 1 ranked contender.
No, he is not.
I'm sorry, but who are you?
I am the IBO computer. I am programmed to provide only fair and unbiased boxing rankings. This fighter is the number 15 ranked contender.
Fair and unbiased boxing rankings? That's a new concept.
Actually, it is not. The IBO has provided unbiased computerized rankings for many years.
Well, we've still got a great fight tonight, folks. In the left corner is the number 15 ranked contender.
The IBO, the champion of integrity. Learn more at IBOboxing.com.
Check out BillyCBoxing.com now, or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts. Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you.
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning.
As a young boy, all Billy C. dreamed about was one day having his own catchphrase.
And we're back. And we're back.
One boy, one dream, one day, everyone will say.
And we're back. 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 And we're back.
Catchphrase coming soon to a theater near you.
And we're back. You're listening to the Talking Boxing with Billy C. show. Glad you could join us. Speaking of joining us, I'm glad to be on Fox Sports Radio. Yeah, I want to thank the WMML crew on 12:30 a.m. on the dial. So we're happy to be here. Back, I should say. Back. Better than ever. Today's show is being brought to you by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria. Don't be so quick to pick up and call unless you're in St. Simon's Island, Georgia, because that's where you're going to have to go for the best pizza. I'm donning his shirt today, but my man Sal, you can check it out if you're in St. Simon's Island, Georgia, or if you're on your way and you're off of 95, literally it's a 10-minute exit off the ramp. You can get to his place in about 10 minutes. Check it out, www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com, or give him a call. Make sure you tell him Billy C sent you and demand the Billy C discount, 912-268-2328, for anybody that's, on their way to St. Simon's Island. Hey, by the way, did you see the, before I get back to the Pacquiao, well, let's talk about that, and then I'll jump to this other thing. But Manny Pacquiao seemingly taking Chris Algieri lightly. Coach, my man Coach is in the chat room right now, and he knows Chris. He's also from Long Island. I'm from Long Island, but the bottom line is he's not a guy you want to take lightly. He's not a guy you want to take lightly. He still has, boxing skill, and he's not a little guy. To tell you the truth, I don't see the reason why Pacquiao is forcing this catch weight at 144. I just don't get it, because Algieri fights at 140, so he's not going to have a problem making that weight, and he's bigger. So, he's much bigger than Manny Pacquiao. So we'll have to wait and see if that works for Manny Pacquiao. But did you catch the video? Yesterday we were talking about Shannon Briggs, who's nothing less than a total fraud with a capital F. And did you catch the video? The video was finally released. I guess it came out while we were doing the show last night, so I didn't get to see it till today. If anybody thinks that this is actually serious, and if it's nothing more than, like a WWE move, Shannon Briggs was actually smiling and laughing. He couldn't even keep a straight face. Klitschko's in the ring just laughing at this guy, saying to himself, take another step towards me, and I'm going to knock you into next week, you juiced up MFer. Because come on, man. I mean, and he's trying to tell people, whoever will listen, he meaning Shannon Briggs, that he's the true champion. That and then he had the balls to criticize Vladimir Klitschko for the level of opposition that he's facing. I guess nobody has mentioned to Shannon Briggs in his last three fights that the level of opposition that he's faced has been nothing less than a total joke. As a matter of fact, Shannon Briggs kept mentioning Pulov. You're fighting guys like Pulov. I think Pulov would and you guys know how I feel about Kubrat Pulov. I don't think he's much at all. And I'll tell you right now, I think he knocks out Shannon Briggs. So I hope they don't make this fight. I hope they don't make this fight because it'll be a travesty if it happens. I'll tell you what won't be a travesty if it happens. Carl Froch against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Looks like this fight is being negotiated right now. They already have a date They're talking about a date taking place on January 24th, and it would be a pay-per-view, and it will take place in Las Vegas. That's right. Now, a couple of things about that. Number one, Carl Froch said he was thinking of retiring unless he could fight where? Las Vegas. He wanted to go and fight in Las Vegas on a pay-per-view, on a big American card. Well, here you go. Now, they were trying to get this fight signed, sealed, and delivered for this year. It didn't happen. Now, Carl Froch also made some crazy statements about Triple G, and that nobody should want to get in the ring with him, and blah, 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 blah. And yesterday we had a caller, and some people were saying, well, maybe this is a ploy to try and get him to fight. I had somebody send me an instant message, or wherever the message came from, somebody forwarded me a message that was sent to me that said that this is already being negotiated, Carl Froch against Triple G. I think they got their wires crossed because the fight that's already being negotiated is Carl Froch against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Now, the fight's not made, and it's not scheduled to take place until January. But check this out. If you look at this fight, and if you look at this fight carefully, it could be a really good fight. Carl Froch, first of all, Carl Froch is an extremely talented fighter, pound-for-pound fighter. Carl Froch, with the exception of a handful of fighters, including a guy in his own weight division, like a la Andre Ward, has arguably fought the toughest level of opposition, pound for pound, than really anyone else in the sport of boxing. When you look at Carl Froch and who he fought, and so on and so forth, he's got a strong beard. He could take a punch. He's been down, but he's gotten up again. He's got some hand speed. He's in it till the end. I was ringside for his fight against Jermaine Taylor, and he was pretty much losing a fight till the end. And he's done that a couple of times. A lot of people thought the first fight against George Groves, he was given a gift, and then he made no mistake about it when he demolished Groves in the rematch. So I like it. I like Froch. Who doesn't love his gorgeous girlfriend? I've become a Froch fan just because of that hottie, Rachel. But here's the thing. The negative I have on Carl Froch, and I've said this 100,000 times, he fights with his hands down. He said his idol that he watched, and this is kind of ironic because he's still fighting, but his idol was Roy Jones Jr. He fights like Roy Jones Jr. Guys like Roy Jones Jr. and Floyd Mayweather who, fight in what I'm going to call an unorthodox way. Same thing, Manny Pacquiao. They're the young kids or the young fighters. They try to emulate these guys, and unless you have the whole package, which a young Roy Jones Jr. was hard to emulate. A Floyd Mayweather, cherry picking his opponents and not fighting southpaws and using his defensive stance and his ring savvy. He's hard to emulate as well. We all saw what the shoulder roll defense did for Adrian Broner. And Carl Froch fighting with his hands down, he doesn't have the hand speed of Roy Jones Jr. He doesn't even have the mobility of Roy Jones Jr., what Roy Jones Jr. used to have. So I've always thought that he was very susceptible to being stopped or at least beaten up. The other thing about Carl Froch is that when he delivers his punches, they seem like they should never hurt anybody. He just delivers them awkwardly, sort of like a baby Huey trying to, run around the bases, But the truth of the matter is that he goes above all those things. He does knock people out. He does have, somewhat deceiving hand speed. His defense is questionable. He does take a lot of shots, but he's got a strong chin. Now, when he steps in with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., assuming the fight does take place January 24th, he's in for a big test. Although he's way beyond being tested, he's never fought a guy that will be relentless with a body attack like Chavez Jr. is. And I don't know if he's fought a guy with the whiskers of Chavez Jr. Chavez Jr., we were talking about this yesterday. Nobody here, once again, pissed everybody off in the chat room. That's his MO, saying that, he didn't think that Triple G could beat Chavez Jr. Now, I happen to like both of the fighters. I do know this. Chavez has never even shown me that he's even been hurt by somebody. He's been in some lackluster performances. He's been awarded some gifts. He's got his loss, against Sergio Martinez in a fight that he fought basically one round and almost made a miraculous, 12th round victory, coming from behind. But it didn't happen. But he's got he's got a solid chin, and he's strong. And he's going to be weighing about $180, $185 for this fight night on fight night. It's going to be an interesting fight. It's going to be an interesting fight because sometimes Carl Froch has a tendency to start off slow. And if he starts off slow against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., Chavez, who also has a tendency to fight a little strange at times, but assuming Chavez starts out quick and Froch starts out slow, Chavez could start investing in a body attack that could clearly pay dividends. A guy like Carl Froch, the reason why I believe he's so susceptible to a fighter like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is because a guy like Carl Froch, who pretty much banks on coming from behind and getting that second win. And sometimes we've all seen Carl Froch. I mean, 1 minute he's looking like he's done. It's like, who is this guy that's dressed like Carl Froch? And all of a sudden, it's like a different fighter just, got in his body. If Chavez can work the body early in this fight, if it happens, and put some, rounds in the bank, even if he doesn't win the early rounds, and he just, works that body, Carl Froch may not have what we're accustomed to seeing from Carl Froch later in the fight. So it's listen, man. This is an interesting fight if it happens. So we'll see what happens with this. But it's looking like, according to Bob Arum, it's looking like this fight is pretty much slated to take place of January 24th. Eddie Hearn from Matchroom Boxing, which is Carl Froch's promoter, says, hey, we're all good. We're all good to go. Chavez, 48 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, 32 of his wins coming by knockout. Apparently, the first time they were trying to get this fight was because Chavez did not sign an extension with Bob Arum in Top Rank. So we'll see what happens here. Apparently, they are renegotiating, and maybe the sides came up a little closer. I'm not sure, but we'll wait and see about that. Speaking about waiting and seeing, I don't know if you guys caught this, but a lot of discussion we've been talking about this week so far about the Triple G fight with blowing out Daniel Geale, but more importantly, we also were talking about the Bryant Jennings against Mike Perez fight. And although it was a close fight, one of the things that took place to cloud the fight and it's got everybody talking is the Harvey Dock deduction. When people were criticizing Harvey Dock and everything else, I gave you guys my opinion yesterday. If you missed the show and you're a premium podcast subscriber, go back and listen to yesterday's show, or you could check out the YouTube version, I guess. But what you didn't see and what they saw over in England on Sky Sports was the Ola Afolobi against Anthony Caputo Smith fight. We've talked about Steve Smoger and what an embarrassment he is to the sport of boxing, especially lately. If you go just as far back as the Caro Murat and Bernard Hopkins fight, blatantly, sickeningly showing favoritism towards Bernard Hopkins. Basically pushing Murat away, and that move where he tapped him on his head. I mean, totally disgrace. He follows that with kissing. The fight a couple weeks ago. He waves off the fight and then he kisses the guy on the cheek. I mean, come on. After he rubs his what all over him. The last thing a fighter wants when he's getting pummeled is to have Steve Smoger, who has no neck, who wears his belt as a necktie because he's one of those kinds of guys that his pants are all the way up near his boobs. The last thing you want is a troll-like, non-human-looking figure like him. Rubbing his privates all over you, then kissing you on the cheek after you're getting your face bashed in and you're rolling around on the canvas. Well, check this out. If you haven't seen the footage of Ola Afolabi against Anthony Caputo Smith, which was on the undercard of the Triple G fight at Madison Square Garden, well, Steve Smoger was the referee. And, Ola Afolabi fought a fight that I've very, very rarely seen him. He was very aggressive, and he came out and he really put it to Anthony Caputo Smith, and he stopped him. But when Anthony Caputo Smith was down, the protocol for a referee, okay? The protocol for a referee is when a fighter goes down, what happens, okay? This is what happens. The first thing the referee is supposed to do is send the other fighter to his neutral corner. Then he's supposed to glance over and get the count from the timekeeper who started the count. Once he gets the count, he picks up the count from the timekeeper and he continues with the count. Now, every talented, experienced referee that I have ever seen, I have watched them stand in front of the fighter and count. And they're also using their fingers, too. So you see them, he picks up the count. The timekeeper's got 4 up there. So all of a sudden the referee will say 4, 5, and he's doing the numbers in front of the fighter who's trying to get up or whatever. If he's already knocked out and down, a lot of times they'll wave it off. 6, 7, in case there's a language barrier, in case he's still got some cobwebs in his mind or whatever. You think Steve Smoger, who some of these people think is a great referee, guys like the New York State Athletic Commission, the new chief bottle washer over there, guys like Teddy Atlas, guys like these commentators who you hear talking about Steve Smoger all the time, you think that they're going to criticize what Steve Smoger did to Anthony Caputo Smith? He didn't stand in front of him and bark out the numbers when you're supposed to count out. Like when you're counting out a fighter, you're supposed to bark out those numbers loud and clear so that they can hear you. He didn't do that. He didn't stand in front of him barking out the numbers loud and clear and giving him a visual of what the count he was on. He didn't do that. You know what he did? He kneeled next to him and put his lips, I think he might have stuck his tongue in Anthony Caputo Smith's ear because he was whispering the count in his ear. What the F is that? How many more things does this guy have to do to just totally, kick this sport while it's down? Why didn't anybody criticize this guy for doing that? That is not a referee protocol to whisper sweet nothings in a fighter's ear. If you want to try and tell me, oh, well, he wanted to make sure he could hear the count. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That is not protocol. That is not protocol. How can a guy that's in charge of the New York State Athletic Commission let a guy like this referee fights? And worse than that, he lets them teach other referees how to do it. Is this what we want? A whole bunch of Steve Smogers refereeing our fights? It makes me sick to see this. I'm afraid to mention it to my man Larry Hazard tomorrow. God knows what's going to happen if I do that. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. And if you didn't see it, It's up on YouTube. Check it out. The Ola Afolobi against Anthony Caputo Smith, just at the time of the stop. And that's another thing. This guy, everybody says, oh, Steve Smoger, he lets these fights, he lets fighters fight and stuff like that. Yeah, I want to see fighters fight. I do, okay? I'll be the first to say I'd want to see fighters fight. But you know what? Damn it, I don't want to see a fighter end up like Mago Abdulzamov. I don't want to see a fighter, not be able to enjoy life after boxing because a referee didn't make the right call. Howard Goldberg, who's the president of the World Boxing Federation, was a longtime referee and judge, and he said, it's always better to call a fight, wave off a fight too soon than too late. And although sometimes I can agree with that, and sometimes I don't, as I see more and more of this, nonsense that's coming from Steve Smoger, I'm also starting to see that he's not a guy that really is making a quick, educated decision. If you watch the Ola Afolobi Anthony Caputo Smith fight, you will see that this guy was in Dream Street. He couldn't stand straight. He, even Steve Smoger had to guide him back to the direction of where his corner was because the bell had sounded. He's bleeding in multiple places. He's shaking his head no, that he can't move forward. And Steve Smoger helps him back to the corner and was going to let the fight continue. The doctor stood up. Thank God for the ringside doctor at Madison Square Garden. He stood up and said, this fight's over. And Steve Smoger went, oh, okay, the doctor told me to stop it. The doctor told you to stop it? You're standing right there. You can't see it. Instead of whispering the count and sticking your tongue down the ear of Anthony Caputo Smith, come on, man. This guy is listen, something bad is going to happen. And, everybody's going to all of a sudden act like, oh, we didn't know. We thought he was a good referee. Please. All right? There's plenty of good referees out there. Steve Smoger's not one of them. Jeff Fennick said that Lucas Brown, he predicts that Lucas Brown could be a champion in 6 months. I'm not so sure about that. Listen, we were talking to my man Jack yesterday from Holland, and I think he said it best. Listen, I like Lucas Brown, and he's he's got a lot of heart, and he's a brawler. Hey, listen, he's nothing different than a Vinny Matalone. He's nothing different than that. Or a Brian Minto. He's just bigger. We were even talking about a potential matchup between him and Chris Arreola. It would be a great fight. They're both the same size, everything else. But Chris Arreola is, believe it or not, listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth. Chris Arreola is more skilled than Lucas Brown. So, come on, man. I don't know what Jeff Fennick is seeing, but I doubt very much that Lucas Brown could be a world champion in 6 months. Maybe if he somehow got a shot at the winner of Stavern Wilder fight and won, maybe, but I can't see him beating Stavern. And if Wilder beats Stavern, Wilder's going to be a champion for a long time. All right, because, I believe that Wilder is not going to beat Stavern, but if he does, you might as well get used to seeing Deontay Wilder because he's going to be around. Speaking about being around, did you hear that Andre Durrell is making a return to the ring? I don't know if you heard it or not. It's been kind of flying under the radar. Do you know when he's making a return to the ring? This weekend. Yeah, he's taking on Vladimir Bosse. Now, once again, another one of those fights, where, what's going to happen. But listen, in this case, let's be real, all right? Let's be real with Andre Durrell. We can't criticize Andre Durrell for fighting Vladimir Bosse. The guy's been out of the ring. He's been extremely inactive. He's had some issues, blah, 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 blah. So, in this particular case, you can't be too critical of him. I'm more critical of the fights like that are coming up on the Garcia, in Brooklyn. Garcia is taking on Rod Salika. How bad is a fight when the WBC and the WBA refuse to sanction it? When somebody's waving a check in front of the WBC or the WBA and they still say no, how bad can that fight be? It's Danny Garcia against Rod Salika. That's how bad it is. How about the co-main event? Lamont, you dummy. Peterson taking on a 172-year-old Edgar Santana Banana, 29-4. He's actually 35. But here's the thing. Edgar Santana has never been in there really with a real top contender. Santana 29-4. He's got some decent wins, but you're talking about Lamont Peterson, a world champion. The fight should be Lamont Peterson against Danny Garcia, but no, that's not what's happening. Because remember who's running the show here. This one's an Al Heyman deal, right? So they somehow put Danny Garcia in with Rod Salika, although Danny Garcia is one of the few Al Heyman fighters that is signed with Golden Boy. We learned that from Oscar recently. But Lamont Peterson, I'm not sure about him. But the fight everybody wants was Garcia against Peterson, or at least a fight that we would have accepted, not that everybody's longing for it. And what did Al Heyman say, or whoever did his speaking for him? Said, that fight couldn't be made yet. Yeah, because they want to make that fight next. They want to assume that Danny Garcia beats Rod Salika, and then they do a unification with him and Lamont Peterson. But here's the thing. We're talking about a fight on Showtime. We're talking about another showcase night on Showtime. The brass at Showtime are a bunch of morons. How can they let this happen? Does anybody think for a minute that Danny Garcia and Lamont Peterson aren't going to come out victorious when they fight August 9th at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn? And by the way, Daniel Jacobs is taking on Gerard Fletcher to fighting for the vacant regular WBA belt. Now, I know Triple G's got the super WBA middleweight title, but the regular one is on the line. This is another case. No disrespect to Danny Jacobs. I like Danny Jacobs, but he's not a world champion caliber fighter. His last handful of fights have been against, below average fighters. This is what you get, man. This is what you get. It's terrible.
Broadcasting in all corners of the globe, on the web and radio.
He would scoff at a stretch of that man, I would think.
You're listening to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. from upstate New York and the good old US of A.
Boxing is here to stay because we are here to stay.
The best 2 hours of boxing talk on the airwaves.
Hey, fight fans, check out KOFantasyBoxing.com. KO Fantasy Boxing is boxing's only trademarked fantasy game. Check it out, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. Select your own gym, your own fighters, track them through a season that can last from 3 months to a year, depending upon which league you join. You got to check this out, man, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. Join it today. Again, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. And tell him Billy C sent ya.
Now back to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C, the only radio host man enough to take a punch from Mike Tyson.
Wait a minute, man. Hold on there. Jeremy, man, I need you to take this one, all right?
Wait, what? No way. I can't do this.
Need I remind you I'm Billy C, damn it? Now put on that mustache and get in there.
Hey, look at me. I'm Billy C. Crap.
The undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. It's Talkin' Boxing with Billy C.
Test 1 2. Test 1 2. My fellow Americans, good evening. Welcome back to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. It's great to be here discussing the sweet science with everybody. I love boxing. I love talking boxing. It's what I do.
Bill.
Wait, what?
Bill.
Why are you interrupting me? What?
Wrong.
What's the problem?
Billy,
what?
see?
I did not have...
We're gonna have to ask
wrong
you.
Speech. What do you mean wrong, Billy C? What's going on here? Fine, I'll go. I just wanted to talk some boxing on tpsradio.net. That's all I wanted to do. I don't need your damn show. I'll get my own talking wrestling with the other Billy C. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I've always been a Hulkamaniac anyway.
Broadcasting live, brother. Welcome back to Talking Boxing with Billy C on the mighty tpsradio.net, brother. What you gonna do, brother?
And we're back. You're listening to the Talking Boxing with Billy C show. Glad you could join us. And speaking of joining us, I'm glad that we're on Fox Sports Radio, WMML. We'll give a shout out to everyone listening on WMML, 1230 a.m. Glad to be with you guys. That's for sure. Don't forget, we air Monday through Friday, 5 to 7 p.m. And if we're not on a TV station or radio dial near you, then don't forget you could check us out online, www.billycboxing.com, 5 to 7 p.m. Watch us. Hey, listen, it's that time again. It's time for our Blast from the Past. And this week's Blast from the Past, which is being sponsored by the International Boxing Organization, where their computerized ranking system is second to none. Check them out, www.iboboxing.com. Features a guy that I actually knew personally. He was a former world heavyweight champion and a boxing Hall of Famer, Floyd Patterson. And joining me to tell us all about Floyd Patterson is my man Alex Perpali. What's up, brother?
Good evening, Billy C. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. I have a feeling that you're going to be sticking around a little longer tonight, Alex. So I hope you're comfy. And we got a lot to talk about this guy, actually. Floyd Patterson was a very important part of boxing history, and he had a great career. Why don't you start us off about Floyd Patterson?
Yep. Floyd Patterson was, he's a little bit of a controversial guy because I think some people might underrate him, and I think maybe some people overrate him. I agree. I
agree with that, 100%.
Yeah, when people talk about great heavyweight champions, he doesn't pop into head. It's usually, Lewis, Dempsey, Marciano, Ali. And then Patterson is sort of like a second-tier guy. But, when maybe people can write in and say what they think when we're done with this blast. Floyd Patterson, born January 4th, 1935, in Waco, North Carolina. And he was born to working parents. His dad was a laborer, and his mom was a domestic. She cleaned houses and stuff, and there were meager beginnings there. They moved to Bedford-Stuyvesant in New York City, and it's interesting because Floyd is somebody who all boxers end up being very visible. They show a side of their lives, very private parts of their lives. To the public, and from the beginning, it seemed like Floyd, he was a sensitive guy, and his mother actually thought that he had some emotional problems, and he did go to a youth home for disturbed kids, and soon after that, I guess he had a lot of problems. He was truant from school quite a bit, and he was slow in learning and stuff. But eventually, at 14, a little earlier, he had taken up boxing. At 14, he happened upon the gym run by, it was the Gramercy Gym on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. At that time, it was run by none other than Customato. And when people, probably most people, at least my age, are very familiar with Mike Tyson and the Cinderella story he had with Customato. But Mike actually was the third, at least the third. Maybe you know of guys before Patterson, but of guys who were street urchins turned champions. Floyd Patterson was the first one that Customato tutored.
You know, it's funny when you think of, the troubled kids, somebody up there likes me, Rocky Graziano. He was another guy that you and I have to do one on. I don't think we ever did one on him before. I know I did one, but I don't think it was with you. But, he's another one. But Mike Tyson, of course, we all heard all the stories about him. But Floyd Patterson was such a nice guy. Like, if you ever met him and talked to him or whatever, and the way he presented himself and carried himself, always professional. He's kind of a surprise when you talk about that. He was, and kids today probably don't even know what truant is. It means when you're skipping school, damn it, But I mean, you don't think of Floyd Patterson like that. Rocky Graziano, you think he could be one of the Bowery Boy kids, the dead end kids, But Floyd Patterson, no. When you look at Floyd's early record, very early on, look at some of the guys he fought. Yvonne Durrell. And Joey Maxim, these were all guys. Jimmy Slade, he fought Durrell a couple of times. These were all early in his career, and it's kind of ironic because he was being criticized towards, at least when he had the run as a heavyweight champion, for ducking, none other than Sonny Liston. But early in his career, he did fight some tough guys. And the other thing is he was a small guy. He actually started boxing at middleweight.
Yeah, he won the gold medal at middleweight. He won the 165-pound gold medal, and you're right. Early in his career, some of the guys he fought at light heavyweight are the top guys in the world at light heavyweight. But you're right. In terms of being a heavyweight champion, he was small. He, in fact, even at the heaviest he ever was like 225 pounds, and that was sort of an overweight, aged Floyd Patterson. In his prime, he was probably more like 183. So it's unheard of to think of him and of Vladimir Klitschko or Vitaly Klitschko as even being in the same division. But of course they are, and that's the thing about heavyweight champions. And maybe that's one of the reasons why he suffers in a lot of people's minds in terms of an all-time great heavyweight champion, because in a tournament of them, he probably would not do very well because of his size. But at the time, it was enough. He did, in winning the title, he beat Archie Moore. So, and that's the thing. His style, he was very talented, great combinations, real speedy puncher, flurries. He was fun to watch, like all D'Amato fighters were. They were action fighters.
He also had a lot of heart too, Alex. He was a guy that did display a lot of heart in his fights, and you're right. When he won the title against Archie Moore, I mean, when you look at the fighters that he fought, I mentioned some of the early ones, but Archie Moore, Pete Rademacher, which was a big name at the time, Ingmar Johansson. He won 2 out of 3 fights against him. He ended up later on beating George Chavallo, which was a tough out. Eddie Machen, the typical guys that were around during that time. He did fight Ali a couple of times. I mean, he was in there with the best of the best during an era that we talk about today as being one of the best eras in heavyweight boxing. He did have his nemesis, of course, my man, Sonny Liston. Didn't go 2 full rounds in 2 separate fights with the guy. And that's when he lost his title, but he also was the first one to regain it. Tell us about that.
That's right. He had lost the title to Ingmar Johansson, and Johansson, surprised everyone because he had this punch that no one had really seen. It was sort of the fabled Ingo's Bingo, this big right hand. Well, he dropped it on poor Floyd Patterson, dropped him 7 times, and actually this is a record no fighter wants to tie, but he tied the record for second most knockdowns in a heavyweight championship fight with Jess Willard, who was dropped 7 times by Dempsey. Dempsey, I guess, dropped 2 guys 7 times. He dropped Willard and Firpo 7 times. The record being, just as an aside, Carnera was dropped 11 times by Max Baer in a heavyweight championship fight. But yeah, that loss to Johansson really haunted Patterson, and sure enough, they did. They fought almost a year later, and Patterson beat him. And I think that was actually a fight of the year. And if you watch closely, he really hammered Johansson. And when Johansson is dropped the final time, because he gets dropped, I think there's 3 knockdowns, you could see his foot is actually twitching. And then Patterson, being the gentle gladiator that he was, goes over to try to help him up and, help him to his stool. But yeah, winning the heavyweight champion, the first guy to do it.
Not only that, but he
regaining the heavyweight championship.
Right, regaining. But when he won the title the first time, when he won the vacant world heavyweight title, when he knocked out, and that's the thing, he wasn't a big guy, like you said. The most he weighed was 184. He knocks out Archie Moore, in the 5th round, and we watched Archie Moore in the Yvonne Develle fight. I mean, how many times did he go down? If that fight was today, they would have stopped it, after 3. But he wins the world title in 1956. At age 21, which at the time was the youngest ever for a heavyweight, and the guy who beat him was Mike Tyson, who ended up winning the world title when he was 20 years later in 1986.
Yeah, it's weird how it's from the same trainer.
Yeah,
but yeah, that he looks incredible in that win over Archie Moore. I posted that in the Facebook group, and I'll tweet it later as well. But and if people are fans of Mike Tyson, for me, what I enjoyed watching that, it was the longest I've ever watched, or the most of that fight I've ever seen, because I've seen the knockout before. But the clip is actually narrated by Rocky Marciano.
That's cool.
And Patterson looks incredible. The jab is just beautiful. I mean, he's able to. He's like, he throws a left hook off the jab. His just had real quick, snappy punches. Not a hard puncher, but he'd get you. He'd wear you down.
He had some weird fights with the same fighters over and over. But one that sticks out for me was, we talk about tournaments and stuff like that. When Muhammad Ali, just to give the younger viewers an idea of what was going on at the time, when Ali, which was Cassius Clay at the time, refused to go into the army for the Vietnam War, they stripped him of his title, but they really didn't know what to do with that title. At the time, Joe Frazier ended up winning the world heavyweight title. As far as the New York State Athletic Commission was concerned, they had their own world title. Well, the WBA came around, and they held a heavyweight tournament, and they gathered up all the heavyweights and that were around, and they fought in this tournament to fight for the right to win the WBA heavyweight title. And Jerry Quarry ended up, Floyd Patterson was fighting along the way, and he ended up getting in the ring with Jerry Quarry and lost a highly disputed decision against Jerry Quarry, which eliminated him from this 8-man tournament. And then the title was eventually won and everything else. Jimmy Ellis ended up winning it. And then, ironically enough, he comes back and gets a shot at that same WBA title against Jimmy Ellis, who was similar to him in size. Jimmy Ellis followed a very similar path in terms of, starting out at middleweight and everything else. And once again, for that WBA belt, he fights Jimmy Ellis and loses another highly disputed decision. So both times for the WBA title, he loses, or actually the one was for, an elimination towards it, but both times he fights in fights that everyone ringside felt that he won, and he didn't get the decision in either one.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, too, because it's amazing how many names are on his record.
I know.
In that late stage of his career.
And you know what? It's funny you say that, because if you look at it's throughout his career. You look at his early stage, and like the 7th, 8th fight, he's fighting Yvonne Develle. Right after that, Joey Maxim, Jimmy Slade. Those are 3 Hall of Famers right there. And then you're in the heart of his career, and he's fighting and beating guys like. We mentioned Archie Moore and Rademacher and Johansson, et cetera, Peter McNeely's father, Tom McNeely. Then he meets up with Sonny Liston. Then he starts his climb back. And who's he fighting? The same guys we've heard. Eddie Machen, George Chuvalo, Henry Cooper. And then even after he was pretty much out of it and nobody gave him a chance, he made one last run after the Jimmy Ellis fight. And again, he's fighting big names like Oscar Bonavena. He beat him in a 10-round decision in New York to set up his last fight was a shot at Ali and his NABF title, and he lost and walked away from the sport for good.
Yeah, those were, after that, even at the first Ali fight, those names I thought were impressive, like Henry Cooper, Jerry Quarry twice, Ellis, like you're saying, and then Bonavena and Ali again. I mean, because at that point, D'Amato and him had split. D'Amato never wanted him to fight Liston, but he wanted to, and he wanted to rematch him. He thought he would have a better chance. He lasted 4 seconds longer. So then he was, I believe he was out without D'Amato for all those fights later, and he was always suffering from back spasms at that later point in his career. But you're right, I mean, still fighting these greats in a division where he was not a big man. But the thing that was interesting about him is that, I guess, and this was part of probably the split with him and D'Amato, is the next student of boxing that D'Amato trained had dawned on the had appeared in the gym, in D'Amato's gym, and that was in Jose Torres. And evidently there was a little bit of a rivalry between the two of them. At one point when Torres was a young middleweight, he had sparred with Patterson. And I guess from what they said, it was interesting because I read an article by, I think it was Red Smith, and he was saying that the way that Torres and D'Amato dismissed the idea that he knocked Patterson down, they were kind of slow to dismiss it. So it seemed like he probably did get the better of Patterson at some point when he was young. And there was actually, when Torres won the light heavyweight championship, Patterson was there in the audience in a disguise. There had been several times where he was painfully shy, it seems, and one of the things, and there's actually a little clip of him, a good interview, that he just didn't like the attention. He didn't like all those eyes on him, which is amazing to think about it, because when you're thinking about Mike Tyson coming up through the same home, really, at D'Amato's house, they both were adopted there. How different Mike Tyson. I mean, Bill, could you imagine Mike Tyson without the attention? He couldn't be Mike Tyson, Patterson was very much different than that.
Talk about a disguise. I don't know if you caught this, but he was, this is amazing, okay? Now, this is something that's missing today from fighters, all right? These guys, yes, it was called prize fighting. Yes, they did it for money. Yes, they tried to take an easy road every now and then. Yes, they did all of those things, but they also had the pride factor, which I believe is no comparison to today. And I'm not discrediting the fighters today. I'm just saying that pride does not exist as much as it used to. In life, I don't think it does. Even Americans, to be an American after World War II, there was so much pride. Not that we're not proud of our heritage now, but it's just not as important. There's other things that are important, I think, in life. People want to make money. They want a nice car. They want a nice house, et cetera, et cetera. Their priorities are not the same as it was back then. Check this out. Floyd Patterson was so embarrassed of getting overwhelmed by Sonny Liston in the first fight that he actually disguised himself to leave the arena. He put sunglasses on and a fake beard and a hat to walk out of the arena so nobody would notice it was him. I mean, what kind of an extent of trying to save face does a guy do that? How important was it, and how much pride did this man have to disguise himself to leave an arena after having arguably one of his worst performances of his career?
I know it, and to me, the thing I can't get my head around is that he wanted to fight him again. That he believed he could erase that, he could change it up.
That's pride. That's the pride, right?
Yeah, it really was. And there's another a short interview that I found on YouTube that I put in the Facebook group that has a little. He says boxing is a sort of revenge sport, but revenge right then and there, not tomorrow or the next day. Right then and there, you hit me. It may take me a round or two, but I'm going to get you back. And then another point, he talks about how he would wake up at 2:30 in the morning when he was a kid, 11, 12-year-old kid, and at home in Bed-Stuy, and I guess they had a light on a pull string in the bathroom, so the string would hang down, and he'd shoot jabs at that and start shadow boxing, and his father would hear him, and he would say, "Get the hell to bed, 2:30 in the morning, it's 2:30, go to bed, you're jabbing, shadow boxing." But Patterson said, anytime you love something as much as I do, you'll take it above and beyond what it really is. Money is important. I'm very happy there was money in boxing, but I would have boxed without the money.
He did okay financially. I will tell you this. I had the luxury of meeting Floyd Patterson, and he went on. He lived in New Paltz, New York, and he went on and adopted Tracy Harris, which eventually became Tracy Harris Patterson, and trained him to not one but 2 world championships in 2 different weight classes. I actually, the first fighter I ever was involved with, his name was Tony Corrado. He was a middleweight, and we trained and went to Floyd's gym. After I met him the first time, and it's a kind of a funny story, I was always a boxing fan, and I knew who Floyd Patterson was, but I had never met him. And I happened to have been in New Paltz, and at the time I owned a construction company, and we were at a hardware store. It was whatever they call it, like they call them Ace now, but it used to be something else. And I was in the hardware store, and I was with the guys or whatever, and I'm walking around. All of a sudden, I come face to face with Floyd Patterson, right? And I was like, "Oh, Floyd, how are you?" He says, "Oh, hi." He's always talking like that nasally, like his nose. He says, "Oh, how you doing? How you doing, guys? How you doing, guys?" And he's real nice, and he's holding a wheelbarrow wheel in his hand. And, there's 2 kinds of wheelbarrow wheels. One is the kind where you put air in. You pump it up with a tire, bicycle tire pump or regular air pump or whatever. And then the other kind is generally those smaller wheelbarrows that, people use for gardening or whatever, and have those hard plastic wheels on a white rim. If anybody's ever used a wheelbarrow, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not the kind that's got a tube and you can put air in it. It's a hard plastic. It's about 2 inches thick or whatever. So he's standing there, and he says, and the guy from the hardware store, when I was talking to him, comes up. He says, "Hey, Mr. Patterson, how you doing? Do you need any help?" And he pulls out of a bag one of those. He says, "I need a new tire for my wheelbarrow." He had separated that hard plastic wheel from the rim, from the which I didn't even think was possible. Usually, when you replace those, you replace the whole unit. You don't take the thing off. He had separated. Everybody just kind of looked at the guy, and he's like, "Well, I'm not much of a gardener, and it was just really funny. I'll never forget it. And then shortly after that, Tony started his pro career, and we started working out at Floyd's gym. But he was successful as a trainer with Tracy Harris Patterson, although later in life, Tracy screwed Floyd. It turned me against Tracy Patterson big time. He also trained Razor Ruddock. And you know what, Alex? He was also part of the New York State Athletic Commission for a while as well.
Yes, he was, from 1995 to 98, 3 years. And that actually was a sad, the way that ended was sort of sad. But again, you're right. He shows the pride that this man took in anything he did. He was actually in court in 1998 giving a deposition, and he had a short-term memory lapse. And he couldn't remember the names of the people that were his immediate, the people that reported to him. He couldn't remember the names right there in the courtroom. The next day, he stepped down.
Yeah, well, he actually was. He was the commissioner from 95 to 98, but he was involved with the New York State Athletic Commission all the way back in 1977. So he was part of it. And I think there's some clips. I think somebody was asking him about one of his fights. And he says, "I fought him," and that's when that was one of the first times people started realizing that he had a problem. And shortly after that, after he stepped down, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and he ended up with cancer. He was happily married, and he lived a good life. Unfortunately, in my opinion, he left a little too a little too soon. But he had a great boxing career, Hall of Fame career. Any final thoughts on Floyd?
Yeah, 71 years old when he died. Oh, you know what? And I forgot again to run him in the machine. Because we don't do heavyweights, I guess, and too often. And I guess I don't know. It slipped my mind completely. But I think we kind of know he would have a lot of trouble with Vladimir Klitschko.
Everybody would.
He just doesn't have the physical dimensions to deal with him. I mean, even the guys we saw this weekend, he'd have trouble with. However, the thing that was very common with Cuss's fighters is that they were aware of the crowd and they were aware of a spectator sport. So I think he would have fought at a higher pace than we saw these two guys, in the main event this weekend. But in terms of Klitschko, he just, you knew the guy. Do you think he was 6 feet tall? To me, Floyd, that was one of the things I wanted to do is a Google image search. And let me see if I can do that.
He's listed.
If there's any picture of him standing next to Mike Tyson.
Well,
because Tyson we know is more like 5'10".
Right.
Floyd is listed at 6. To me, he seems a little shorter than 6 feet.
Well, he was pretty tall, except I think what makes him seem smaller is his physique wasn't that big. Mike Tyson was a big guy, muscular and everything else. The other thing is that Floyd Patterson fought in a crouch style. He basically fought the peekaboo style. As great as a trainer Cus D'Amato was, he was similar to Kevin Rooney. When I was referring to Kevin Rooney the other day as being a one-dimensional trainer, he taught everybody in the gym the same way. And speaking of Kevin Rooney, if you go into Kevin Rooney's gym right now and you have him, the fighters are in there training, you will see that they're using Cus D'Amato. They made tapes of Cus D'Amato yelling out the punches. 1, 3, 5. It's Cus D'Amato's voice that has been passed down from the time Cus D'Amato used to shout it out, and he passed it down. And they still use it. Mike Tyson used it. Kevin Rooney was teaching his kid the same thing and everything else. Alex just posted a photo of Floyd Patterson with Jose Torres, Cus D'Amato, and Iron Mike himself. And it does look like he's got about an inch or so on him, right? It looks like he's got,
it does. Yeah, because Mike was always listed at 5'11 3/4, but they always kind of fudged that. He's more like 5'10".
I would say 5'10" on the giving him a little, because when I stood right next to him recently, put my arm on his shoulder, and he was looked like he was maybe 2 inches taller than me. I'm 5'8", so I think you're right.
Really?
I think he's about 5'10". Tyson.
Yeah.
But
in that picture, Torres. Torres, his hair looks a little thicker, but Patterson, I would say, like nobody here said, it looks like he's at least an inch, maybe 2 inches taller.
Yeah. Well, Floyd Patterson was a great guy. There's no question about that. You got to give him credit for fighting, and he met a guy that was considered a monster of the day in Sonny Liston. So and he obviously didn't fare too well in that fight, but. Hey, listen, for the radio affiliates out there, we are not going to take a break, so I'm not breaking here at the 28-minute mark, so just a FYI. Alex?
I think that's the sad thing about him. If there was a tournament against, and I think you could say that about some guys like Johansson, too. Although Johansson's chin was probably a little better than Patterson's, Patterson did not have the greatest chin, so monsters like Lennox Lewis and Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko probably would have knocked him out.
But the thing is that, as much as this pains me to say, because no one loves the old-time fighters more than me, including if you even, I hate to even look at him as an old-time fighter, but, even Mike Tyson day, but, Jack Dempsey, Rocky Marciano, my favorite fighters, even Jack Johnson, these guys. If we did have a time machine, even though that they were meaner and everybody always says those words, all you got to do is get underneath the jab and work the body, blah, blah, blah. I just find it hard to believe that, no one's tried it, and they all have tried it and nobody's been successful. I just think that, the old saying, if you're 6'6" and you're chiseled and you're athletic, just as athletic as the 5'10" guy, physically, how are you going to beat the guy? How's Jack Dempsey going to beat this guy? Yes, he beat, a big guy and everything else in Firpo, but, you're not talking, you're not talking Firpo when you're talking Klitschko. I mean, listen, what's his name? Primo Carnera doesn't get any respect. He was in fantastic shape, and he learned how to be a fighter, but he didn't have the skill set that Klitschko has. He's boring. But, and I always say, if the guy wasn't 6'7", I don't know how dominating he would be, because the size is the factor with him, But anyway, definitely. Let's finish this up. Floyd Patterson, great job as usual. Maybe if you get some time, you can run Floyd against some of the heavyweights that came after him, and we could talk about it next week. But Floyd Patterson, former world heavyweight champion, his career record 55 wins, 40 coming by knockout. He had 8 losses in which he was stopped 5 times. He had only 1 draw in his career. Like Alex said, he's listed as 6 foot tall, 71-inch reach, 419 rounds as a pro with a 63% knockout ratio. He was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1991. Floyd Patterson, our blast from the past today. Great job, as usual, Alex. A couple of things I wanted to ask you about, of course. Triple G, man, he takes care of Daniel Geale over the weekend. I'm not so sure anybody's surprised about that. I'm certainly not surprised in the manner in which it happened or anything else. But I, at least, and I didn't really get a chance to talk to you, so I don't know what your feeling is, but I think, although I still hold true to the fact that I don't believe that Triple G has fought that huge name and has had that signature fight, but I do believe that his showing on Saturday kind of clarifies that this guy is in a league of his own. I think he's not given enough credit for his ring generalship. I think that this guy has more than just punching power. I think he's a well-rounded fighter. I think he's the guy in the middleweight division, and maybe even super middleweight division at some point. Although I don't think he's a big guy. Everybody's talking about him moving up to super middleweight or even light heavyweight. But to me, he was about the same size as Geale. He looks like a regular old middleweight to me. What's your thoughts on Triple G and all those things?
Yeah, I was a little disappointed that HBO didn't show you what they weighed that night. Sometimes, I think that's one of my favorite things that they do, because I think you get more info about that, like how much the rehydration weight is. That's interesting to learn that. Yeah, he's the future. He was impressive as hell. I think it went very much the way we thought it was going to go. I think what was very impressive to me was that it was sort of like a retaliation shot that caught Geale. He was almost reflexively firing back. It wasn't even, because he had just been nailed himself.
It was simultaneous.
And that's pretty impressive. That it wasn't even like he was in the midst of delivering his offense. He just, if you thought about it that way, he probably would have had more on it. Maybe this shows you the power that this guy has in both fists.
Wait a minute, Alex. Wait, I just want to make sure we're on the same page with that. That punch, that the knockout punch, obviously. At the same time, you see what I saw was them delivering the punch at the same time. As a matter of fact, Geale got to him first, and that's what was so amazing to me, because Geale lands his punch flush, and as his face is being mushed in, I'm talking about his, meaning Triple G, he's in the motion of delivering his right hand, and he still muscles it past the scientific where two forces meet each other. I mean, realistically, it shouldn't have been that hard, right? It should have slowed it down a little bit. He lands the punch, and he was able to muscle that second punch that he didn't have to land, but it was on its way. I was impressed with that, because I saw a guy that they both kind of landed at the same time, but the difference was Geale was knocked out.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Golovkin was hit. It may be a tenth of a second, but you're right. I mean, it's almost like it's at the same time that he gets hit and is firing back. And yeah, that left he threw didn't even need to. It didn't land, and it didn't need to. Yeah, he's just got a lot of power, and I think that you could tell just from the beginning, Gil was giving him so much movement because he was intimidated, and even from the jabs and stuff that Golovkin was landing in the first round. All his punches he throws with murderous intent, and yet he is such a good sport. There was another point. Oh, he could have gone after him. Well, I mean, he hit the deck right away. When there was that ridiculous incident with the cameraman, which I missed yesterday, I would have loved to hear Emily's take on that, because I couldn't believe that those guys are supposed to, stay far enough back beyond the apron. I mean, he used because it was all the way around his ankle. It was like a leg snare, and he's got enough problems. He's got Triple G, one of the most dangerous fighters on earth, trying to take his head off.
Not only that, but he yanks it. He pulls his foot right from under him when it got caught. Like he's going, like the camera guy was so conscious of losing his camera that he jerked it back. That's what knocked the foot out from underneath him, And then the corners quickly wiping up. They thought he slipped. They're cleaning up the water, in the corner. But
evidently that cameraman was cut in that little melee there, and I guess someone mentioned it at the post-fight press conference, and Gil, good-natured guy that he is, said something like, "Well, at least I cut somebody tonight."
Yeah, that's good. I didn't hear that. That's good stuff. But I just think Triple G showed us some other stuff in that fight. He showed us that that mystery of what exactly is ring generalship. I think he showed us that on Saturday night because he was dictating that fight. He was controlling where Gil went. Gil tried to circle to his right. Triple G was right there. Forced Gil to circle to his left, but taking a step backwards as he does it, and then bam, Triple G's right there. One thing I noticed in that fight, Triple G never took a step backwards. Every time Gil tried to, inflict his will on Triple G stood his ground, and Gil was the guy that went back. That's ring generalship. This guy cuts the ring off like I've really haven't seen in a long time. He just makes the ring smaller and smaller and smaller until he's got the guy in the corner or against the ropes, and then we all see what happens when he gets him there.
Yeah, it's scary. It is kind of like a chess player in that sense. He's just cutting up the ring like it's the board, and you're in trouble.
Yeah, exactly like chess. The way you cut up the board, you own sections of the board. Yeah, it's a good analogy. I think he's the next star. We're looking at some young stars. Obviously we got Alvarez, Triple G's there, Kovalev, Terrence Crawford. I mean, these are our superstars now. This is that next generation. Pacquiao and Floyd are going to be going bye-bye soon, hopefully, and we'll be looking forward to these guys. So I'm glad that we got a couple of exciting guys in the mix.
And I love what he said, because I agree with it 100%. Boxing is as much spectacle as it is sport. You see what happened this week with Chavez and the visa. I mean, this is a business enterprise. It's the hurt business. And so entertainment value is very important. And that was great when Triple G said, "This is big drama show." It is.
Yeah, listen, somebody said it. I think one of the callers the other day said that, he loved that post-fight interview almost as much as the fight. And I never listened to those post-fight interviews, and I found myself wanting to hear what he had to say, and when you hear a guy that, is smiling like that and seems so good. He's just so good for the sport. If we had more fighters like him, I don't think that there would be so much negativity around our sport. But speaking of negativity, the co-main event that had Bryant Jennings taking on Mike Perez, this was a tough fight for me. I eventually did pick Bryant Jennings, and I have a couple of thoughts on the fight. First of all, Mike Perez, what the hell's he doing with Adam Booth? Adam Booth, I said yesterday, Alex, not only do I think he's the worst trainer I've ever seen, not only do I think that he shouldn't be allowed to train fighters, I don't even think he should be allowed to buy a ticket to be a spectator at a boxing event. That's how bad I think Adam Booth is. Yes, he had some success with David Hay, but you know how that goes, being at the right place at the right time. He's destroyed everyone else he's been with, and it looked like Mike Perez was no different. He's playing Zen Master with Mike Perez, telling him, you embarrass him, do this, do that. But he wasn't giving him any technical advice until the very end, and then I think there was a language barrier there. Mike Perez, I just think he needs a solid trainer. I think it's there for him, his talent. With that said, Brian Jennings, so many people were saying that he might be as good as he's ever going to be. Maybe so. I think that might be a good statement. Adam Booth made a comment to the guys on HBO that he's acting boxing, meaning that, he's fresh in it, he's learning it. And it almost seems like there's some truth to that, and I wonder how much better Jennings can be. Before we get to the controversial part, what was your assessment of the fight itself, excluding the controversy?
Well, I think that if he was acting, then, I think that, he just acted his, Cuban great, amateur great at least, out of a win. Because Perez really, I think one of the problems we saw was conditioning, which, at that level, to gas out after 5 or 6 rounds, which it sure looked like he did, in a fight that, I was surprised that it turned out looking like that. I was looking forward to that fight. I thought Brian Jennings would push things a little more, but I think one of the things that happened to him was that Perez tired, like Harold Letterman was pointing out, Perez was really using his body to tire out Jennings. And Jennings, who's usually in really good shape, it did affect him. And I think that's what ended up making it really kind of a dull fight towards the second half, even though Jennings was able to come on at that point. In the early going, I was impressed with how fast Perez's hands were when he threw them. But that was the thing. Just the level of activity, I was really disappointed. Sometimes you get that with heavies, but, I was surprised that it was so uninspired. Although at one point, I did think that Jim and Max were a little nuts when they said if Vladimir Klitschko, they were saying that if Vladimir Klitschko might have fallen asleep
I love that
watching that fight. Come on. If Vladimir Klitschko fell asleep during that fight, he's got a hell of a lot of nerve.
No,
some of the fights he's given up.
The way Max said it was funny. He said, they said, I don't think he's losing any sleep over, watching this fight to get the winner. And then they said, so I don't know if he's even staying awake during this fight or whatever, and I think they were referring to the worry part. One thing, I think the reason why we didn't see what we normally see out of Jennings is because Mike Perez can punch pretty hard. I think that Jennings was rocked a little bit in the beginning of that fight. One thing I thought that Perez did not do that he should have done, if I'm no trainer, but I would have had, there was so much body to hit on Brian Jennings. Why wasn't Perez working that body? Why didn't he work that body for the first 5 or 6 rounds? There's just not enough, dedication to body punching in boxing today, especially when you have a lanky guy in front of you, like Brian Jennings was. Perez could have put some money in the bank by working that body. And then when he tired, like you said, he was doing exactly what Harold described. Which brings me to the controversy. Everybody jumped all over, including Harold, jumped all over, Harvey Dock for the point deduction. And, I was just watching in shock of what was happening. But then I saw the replay. And unfortunately, I'm not allowed to talk to Harvey. He's not allowed to talk about anything because the New York State Athletic Commission has a gag order on all the officials. They're not allowed to talk to media about anything.
That doesn't seem right.
Well, it's because of the Mago situation. Remember, one of the inspectors was the guy who dropped the I told them to go take a cab to the hospital. It was that guy. But after I saw the replay, Alex, I saw a blatant, launching intentional headbutt on Mike Perez's part. Now, the problem with this is we don't know if that's why Harvey Dock deducted the point. The announcer said it was deducted from excessive holding, but we didn't see that.
It was for a late hitting on the brake.
Oh, yeah, but who said that? No one. The announcer said
it. Somebody
right. The announcer.
That's what the replay showed.
Yeah, well, the replay. If you watch the replay, it shows an intentional headbutt. It shows you watch that replay, and you will see when he's Jennings is leaning against the ropes. What happened was Perez pushes him right across the ring, just like Harold said. He had his arms locked, push him, and he ends up against the ropes. The weight of both of them goes against the ropes. He leans back, and right then, with his hands still holding Jennings, Perez is shorter than Jennings, lifts his head up, and definitely it was an intentional headbutt. And right after that, Doc breaks him up and takes the point away. So when I saw at first I'm like, what's he doing? Because it happened so fast. But when I saw the replay, I said, oh, that's what he took the point away for, and I was okay with it. Since then, everyone says it was excessive holding. It was too much of this, too much of that, hitting on the brake. He should have warned him. He should have done this. He should have done that. And I didn't see any of that. I didn't see him, doing any hard warnings. I did hear that he was, from people that were there, saying that he was giving warnings in between rounds. He was going over to the corners. But obviously, if you didn't see that headbutt, you can't agree with me then.
No, I didn't notice a headbutt. I'll definitely watch it again. I was just looking on YouTube to see if it's there, but I can't find it quickly. I'll have to see if there was a headbutt, because there is a moment where Jennings looks at the ref, and maybe that's after the headbutt.
Yeah.
And then he does get hit on the brake.
Well, he got hit on.
He was looking at the ref because he was like saying, "Did you see the headbutt?" And then the ref takes the point, and so in a sense, the ref's taking the point for the headbutt and the late hit. I mean, the hit on the brake. So in that case, I don't know. To me, it was all much ado about nothing, because I don't know. The fight was such a stinker. I don't think that made the difference in the fight. It didn't on my card. I didn't score it until a few days later. So maybe it would have made a difference if I was scoring it live. I don't know.
Well,
to me, I think when a ref, like Steve Weisfeld said, if a ref sees something that was a blatant foul, he can take as much of a point right there with no warning whatsoever.
Exactly, an intentional foul. And if I'm correct, and I want you to watch it, because when you see it in slow mo, so if that was the reason Doc took the point, then he's a great referee, because he saw it live and most people missed it. I didn't see it live. I saw it from the replay. It happened so fast. But when you watch the replay, and HBO does have a replay of it, you'll see it. It's a intentional headbutt. He gets right underneath and launches his head up there. And to me, that could be an automatic DQ. Hey, listen, we're running out of time. We got a couple of big fights this weekend. Bam Bam Rios is taking on Diego Chavez. He did get his visa, and he also brought a MasterCard with him as well. And he is in the States, and that fight is happening. What's your thoughts on that one?
Of course it's happening. The show must go on. Vegas needs money. Yeah, I think, I don't know, I like Rios to win a close fight. I mean, I think that Rios is one of those guys, he's a troglodyte, and I say that in a loving way. The troglodytes are fun to watch. He's right up there with Provodnikov. They're not a lot of science, but a lot of thrills. Chavez, I think, might be able to give him some difficulty, but I like Rios to win. I'm more excited, of course, for Kovalev, because of the two of the best fighters in the world, with as Casey Kasem, the late Casey Kasem would say, the two fighters with a bullet. are Kovalev and Golovkin, because they're going places.
Speaking of Casey Kasem, did they ever find a body? Isn't he?
I don't know. We don't know
Last I heard, they couldn't find a body. You know, it's like, I seem to have misplaced his dead body. You know, but
a friend of mine was saying that how many Scooby snacks would you get if you do find?
Yeah. Sergey Kovalev. Speaking of Sergey Kovalev, he's taking on Blake Caparello. You know, Kovalev is in a similar situation as Triple G. You know, they're fighting everybody they're putting in front of him, and, you know, he'll be criticized. Although Blake Caparello is a good fighter, I just don't know how good he's going to be against Sergey Kovalev. Kovalev's another one of these guys that is more than just a puncher. What's your thoughts on this one? When's it going to end?
Yeah, I think, like Triple G, I think it's safe to bet the under 5 with this one. Kovalev, to me, is, as much as I think Golovkin is more complete, Kovalev is the one that I think is the most frightening of the future stars, of the now and future stars in the game, and in part because he's bigger, but he's also, there's a meanness about him, and this, I like the guys who seem to have a joy about doing harm, and he seems to do that, you know. And you know, you saw that in his last fight when he dropped Agnew and then sort of stood over him, you know, menacing him. You know, the sport needs that, and so I look for a highlight reel type KO this weekend.
You know, that Agnew fight, you know, showed us some stuff about Kovalev. You know, Agnew did box and last longer than some people thought. And, you know, I think Kovalev has more skill than people are giving him credit for, similar to Triple G. You know,
definitely, and that's the thing that I think about him is that I'm surprised that, as you were saying earlier, that Hopkins is going to is interested in fighting him. That Santa Liquido story, because I spoke to John David Jackson, Kovalev's trainer, and he you know, has experience being in the ring with Hopkins, and he just does not think that Hopkins would want any part of that. I think that could be Hopkins' last fight if he fights Kovalev.
Well, you know, the thing is you know, this is what separates real fighters from guys that are just making a lot of money and keeping their record intact. You know, I mean, Bernard Hopkins is an all-time great. He's a throwback fighter, and I'm not a big Hopkins fan. You know that more than anybody. You know, but I have to give the guy respect. You know, I mean, definitely. You know, he's not willing. Yes, he's put on some stinkers. Yes, he's pulled some shenanigans. But, you know, if he does step in that ring with Kovalev, you know, he's got more, you know what's, than Adonis Stevenson. Adonis Stevenson is taking the you-know-who route, and he's going to cherry pick and walk away with money in his pocket, which is great for him and his bank account, but it's certainly not what we all expect when you sign up to be a pro boxer.
It's true. And imagine if Hopkins was to beat Kovalev. Oh dear God!
If he beat, let me tell you something. If Bernard Hopkins beat Kovalev, especially at 50 years old, it would be hard not to put Bernard Hopkins in the top echelon of all-time greatness. As a matter of fact, regardless of whether he wins the fight or loses his next 3, when all is said and done, I believe that he will fall in a higher spot in all-time great, rankings than Floyd Mayweather, assuming that Floyd Mayweather, retires undefeated at 50-0. I still think that Bernard Hopkins, in the large scope of things, will fall higher than him as an all-time great because of the different diversified fights that he's been in and the fact that he's never backed down from anybody.
It's true. Yeah, if he was to beat Kovalev, I mean, the way he beat Pavlik in Trinidad, I mean, he would be on the Mount Rushmore of boxing.
You'd have to. Yeah, I'd hate to admit it, but I would have to be a fan, you know. If he beats Kovalev, I would have to be a fan. I really would. But anyway, Alex, great job as usual, man, and I look forward to it next week, my man.
All right, Billy C., take care.
All right, take care. That's Alex Perpali. You could catch him right here on Wednesdays when we do the Blast from the Past, and he's very thorough on that. He also calls in, and we talk about some other stuff like the fights. And speaking of the fights, we do have a good lineup of the Billy C. Challenge this weekend. I will be getting it to everyone tomorrow. As a matter of fact, tomorrow morning we'll get everything there. Real quickly, on Saturday we have a fight. Dennis Douglin is taking on Eduardo Mercedes. That's going to be a fight that's going to be on this weekend, and also an update on the fight next week in Nevada. Lennox Allen pulled out of his fight with Norbert Nemisponte, and now Jason Escalera is filling in for him on that fight. And also this weekend, in addition to the Kovalev-Caparello fight, we also have Chilimba. Isaac Chilimba will be stepping in the ring with Corey Cummings, which will also be kind of an interesting fight there as well. So we will see this. I guess HBO is going to be doing a dual site broadcast, because I know Kovalev is on HBO, and that fight is taking place in Atlantic City, and the other fight is taking place in Las Vegas. So interesting. It's expensive to do those dual site events, man. I'll tell you that.
Wake up. It's time for It's too early for a trivia question.
All right, today's It's Too Early for a Trivia Question is being brought to us by The Gentleman Boxer. It's a great read written by Ian Grumeza. Get yourself a copy of The Gentleman Boxer, where all good books are sold. Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, etc., etc. You can also get a signed copy by visiting our website, www.billycboxing.com, and clicking on one of the Gentleman Boxer banners. Today's It's Too Early for a Trivia Question is also sponsored by the Titty Grab game. If you're looking for a fun game, all in the name of titties, then check out www.tittygrab.com. And in case you're wondering, it comes with a titty. It does. www.tittygrab.com. And finally, the trivia question is being brought to us by the World Boxing Federation, and their next two events that are taking place here in the United States. One is in Saratoga, New York, August 15th. You can get some tickets by visiting www.billycboxing.com and clicking on the fight poster. And on August 22nd in Tampa, Florida, Chevelle Fist of Steel Halbach will be taking on Victoria Cisneros for a world welterweight title, and a junior welterweight title will be on the line when Chop Chop Corley fights for that. If you're the first one to email me, Billy@TalkinBoxing, that's TalkinBoxing.com, with the answer to this trivia question, you'll win a choice of some great prizes. Which two fighters met each other 14 times with neither one of them ever winning a single fight? Which two fighters met each other 14 times with neither one ever winning a single fight? I'm going to give you a big hint. It took place between 1910 and 1920. 1910 and 1920. Good luck with that one. First one to email me, Billy@TalkinBoxing, TalkinBoxing.com.
This day in boxing history.
And finally, this day in boxing history is being brought to us by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria. It's the best pizza on the planet, but you got to go to St. Simon's Island in Georgia to get it. Check it out, www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com, or if you're in that area, call 912-268-2328. On this day, July 30th, in 1992, Al Cole wins a 12-round decision over James Waring to win the IBF World Cruiserweight title. It took place in Stanhope, New Jersey. On this day, 1972, Enrique Pinder wins a 15-round decision over Rafael Herrera to win the World Bantamweight title. It took place in Panama City. On this day in 1995, Wayne McCullough wins a 12-round decision over Yusui Yakayushi to win the WBC World Bantamweight title. It took place in Nagoya. On this day in 1884, non-parallel Jack Dempsey knocks out George Full James in the 22nd round to win the vacant world middleweight title. It took place in Staten Island, New York. On this day in 1931, Frankie Gennaro knocks out Jackie Harmon in the 6th round to retain his NBA and IBU world flyweight titles. It took place in Waterbury, Connecticut. And on this day in 1977, Carlos Monzon wins a 15-round decision over Rodrigo Valdez to retain his WBC and WBA world middleweight titles in Monte Carlo. This was Monzon's last last professional fight. He finished his Hall of Fame career with 87 wins, 58 by knockout, 3 losses, never was stopped, and 9 draws. Hey, man, that concludes our show for today. I want to thank WMML and Fox Sports Radio for having us. Oh, yeah, I got one more thing to say.